everyone. Welcome to another episode of I Guess I'll Do It with Pat House, a comedy podcast where I talk about comedy with comedians. Today, I have a fantastic guest. I'm very excited. She has her own podcast, The Dork Forest. Very, very fun podcast. And also The Jackie and Laurie Show. Huge fan of both. But today, I have Jackie Kashian. Jackie, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Here we are.
Here we are.
Let's talk about comedy some more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. So this is a postpone. We were supposed to do it last week, and then you got a dog, correct?
Sure did. There he is.
All right. What's funny about that is you are the second comic in 2021 to postpone because they got a dog. And I'm like, is that the new excuse? Like, is that the new, like, the dog ate my homework or my grandmom died? Like, sorry, I can't come.
The dog ate my calendar. Yeah, the dog totally ate my calendar. And so it's weird about getting a dog. I've never had a dog. I've wanted a dog since I was born. And since this is a comedy podcast, I'm going to tell you my joke about it that I wrote in 1985, which is I wanted a dog so bad that by the time I was 9, I wanted to be blind. And I made the mistake of telling my parents that. And they burst out laughing and said, well, we still wouldn't get you a dog. We'd get you a stick. You could name the stick.
It's your first time having a dog?
This is it.
Oh,
we went to the pound and got a dog. Turns out in Los Angeles, you get a choice between pit bull mixes and Chihuahua mixes. And I went Chihuahua mix because first dog.
Okay. I've had several pit mixes, and they're beautiful, friendly dogs.
Yes, but from the pound, I didn't want it to be if there was going to be me wrestling a dog, I wanted it to be a smaller dog.
I understand because we have a pit mix now, and she's stronger than I am. So we have 2 leashes on the walks, and she's still in charge. Like,
right?
No,
and
like
all
no
you
question.
Can hope for is a good sport.
Yes, and she is.
Yes. This dog is incredibly polite, and we're told that he will test us. We've had him 7 days today.
Okay.
And I'm like, he can test us, but we also know that he can be polite. So he's going to fail that test, it turns out.
Dogs definitely do get testy when you first when they first come into your home. Like they kind of they pull some shit and then look at you like what? Like it definitely
what
happens.
What about this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I already ate it, so what are you gonna do?
It's over now. What about next time? And there's one couch we don't want the dog to jump on. And in the last 7 days, I would say he's jumped on it like once or twice every 2 or 3 days going, what about now? And you guys are both on that couch. What if I wanted to cuddle? You seem to like cuddling.
Yeah.
Would you want to? No.
It's my couch too, is what he's saying.
Right, it isn't. That one. I'm willing to die on that hill. Turns out, we just bought that couch, so.
Yeah,
too much info.
It's like a whole different way of life. And then I'm like, man, what's it like having kids when this is just a fucking dog?
Right, because this is essentially just having, and he's an older dog. Like he's not a puppy. He's 8.
Oh, so he's already should be like pretty calm and pretty chill.
Yeah, he's pretty mellow, and he's house trained, and he's and I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
For this first couple of weeks. Here we go.
I did that before I had the dog.
Just loose.
Yeah.
Anyway, hello and welcome to Dog Talk.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about, will there be jokes about the dog? And the only jokes I've come up with was I was so nervous about getting a dog because I've wanted one for so long that I was like, how come only the dog gets a crate to hide in for the first couple of days? I would kind of I'd like a crate to hide in.
I think that's just the bedroom. Just lock the door by yourself, and that's like our crate, you know?
Yeah, which is fine, but then you're worried about if the dog is sort of, and this dog, like I said, is great, but you can't really hide yourself in your own home and let the dog have the run of it.
No,
you gotta kind of watch.
But some dogs still try to make a run of it. They still come in commanding the house.
It's true.
But you got an older dog, so that really shouldn't be a problem.
Right. And Andy, my husband's had dogs his entire life. We had an iguana.
Oh, okay. Exotic pets.
Here's how the Andes of the world get animals. His entire family. His dad trained bird dogs from horseback for field trials. So that sentence was so long I ran out of air.
Where's he from?
Mississippi.
Okay.
And his dad lived in Arkansas the last 15, 20 years of his life. But Andy grew up in central northern California, like outside the Bay Area. And,
okay.
But in a tiny town. And then his moms have always had dogs. Like everybody's always had dogs. But the thing is they find animals, right? They rarely, if ever, go to the pound and get a dog. So he got the iguana when he was working at Sony PlayStation, and a guy impulse bought 3 iguanas, brought them back from lunch. And Andy was like, iguanas grow to be like 4 feet long. And the guy's like, what? He's like, do you want an iguana? And so him and another guy were like, yeah, I guess we'll each take an iguana. So he took one of the iguanas, and his is the only one that lived. The other 2 guys killed their iguanas in the first year.
Oh,
I guess iguanas are a little tricky, but so Andy's really good with animals. And so
I've only seen him in Florida in trees, and sometimes you're like, Jesus Christ, that thing is huge.
They're huge, and they climb, and you know how they get out of trees? They let go. And
they just fall.
Yeah. And so Tiberius, who died like 2 years ago, at 23 years old, that's plenty of years for an iguana. And
not fair. It's not fair that iguanas outlive dogs.
Oh, he was a great pet. You could essentially just leave, because he only ate like calcium-rich leafy greens and bananas, right, or mangoes or whatever. And so you could leave him like a big bowl of greens in his kennel, which was big enough for him to crash around in, for like 2 days. So you could go away for the weekend and you'd be all right. And then we'd have friends look in on him, and and then we'd let him in the backyard, and he was actually a great pet. But
pretty cool.
When he died, I was like, can we get a dog? And Andy was like, you wouldn't have a dog. I would have a dog because you're on the road 42 weeks a year. And then the pandemic happened.
Yep. And then you got a dog and I got a podcast.
Yep. That's what happens. Andy got a podcast. And he's a game designer.
So you and I, we first met in Philly. You came to Helium when the club first opened. And then like a year or 2 later, I featured for you at the Portland Helium.
Right.
And I think that was the only time we worked together. But I remember a couple things from that week because one, it was fun. The shows were really good.
Nice.
Because my first time I featured in Portland, I had a really rough go. I remembered it so vividly because that's what we do. We remember everything. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
I was featuring for Dana Gould, and I liked one show of the 6, and I was like, that was a fucking rough week. So my second time back, I was featuring for you, and we were 6 for 6. All the shows were good. I'm like, oh, thank God I'm back on track here. But I was on the verge of recording my first album, and you told me, make sure you sell it for $20 when you get CDs.
Right.
I remember you telling me that.
Yep.
And also, I just remembered this earlier today. I brought a camera with me, and I guess I always had the seed for this podcast planted in my head because I asked if I could interview you on camera and ask you a couple comedy questions about, your career and stuff. And you were very nice, and we did it. And I went back to my hotel and watched it, and it was so fucking awkward and embarrassing. I had no idea what I was doing. I never did that again. But you were the only person I did that idea with.
Well, aren't I a good sport?
So anyway, all it took was 9 years later and a global pandemic, and now I got the wheels turning again.
Yeah, there you go. And do you put this out as video as I dash off camera to grab more coffee?
Just audio.
Just audio. Oh, good. Then nobody saw me go get coffee.
No, Todd Glass got up 66 times during our podcast, so don't even worry about it.
I have a pitcher of coffee.
I have Jaeger in a pint glass. No, that's just diet soda.
You cut that with a little bit of peppermint schnapps, and what you got there is a dead Nazi.
Yeah. I was going to say screaming Nazi.
Oh, yeah.
But I knew it as Jaeger Goldschlager, and was it Rumpelmans?
Well, it was just they didn't put Goldschlager in it where I was. It was just half Jägermeister and half pepper Rumpelmans.
Ooh.
The Goldschlager was separate, and that was just, you were like, if you wanted like a cinnamon bomb. And I was like, I am, it turns out, an old lady who would like to pretend I'm sipping at a shot.
Yeah.
In my twilight years, but I'm in my 20s and I'm not sipping. And,
oh no. That's a straight up shooting game.
And that's a shooting game, and it's 190 proof per. So it's ridiculous.
Yeah, those shots you don't fuck around with. So we met in Philly. We worked together in Portland, and then you came through Philly again with Maria, I believe, and I saw you there. But I do remember that Portland week being really fun. How is the pandemic treating you? Outdoor shows, Zoom shows?
All Zoom. I've done a couple. I've done one in an alley that was so uncomfortable. I don't wanna. And then I did a couple of drive-ins.
Mm-hmm.
And those were okay. I mean, but the thing is it's so funny, people talking about, Zoom shows aren't real. I'm like, really? Standing in front of a row of cars and looking at people in their dome lights? That feels real? Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know how true it is, but I think on some of the car shows that like you honk if you like a joke. That seems
There's some
very
honking.
unusual.
Sometimes they give you clappers. The thing is, it's sort of like back in the 90s, they were like, alternative comedy isn't comedy. And alternative jackass comics would be like, club comedy is all hacky, it's not real comedy. And you're like, you guys got a lot of opinions. How about it's all whatever you say it is, and best of luck. And there's going to be some tool bag who likes the comedy that I don't like. And there's going to be someone you think is a tool bag who likes my comedy. Actually, a lot of people like my comedy. I'm the German Shepherd, the golden retriever of stand-up comedy over here. I'm very likable.
I agree with that. I was a fan of before I started doing stand up, I loved Comedy Central Presents, and I remember seeing yours before I even started. I remember you had the joke about your car getting broken into, and you said, "Check the door, dumbass."
Right.
And then
nobody's locking an '89 Mazda 323 hatchback.
Yes, and then I always remember that's where I keep my vagina, because I think you gave me a pin. Do you have a pin of that or a bumper sticker?
It was a pin, and it was because people wanted the T-shirt, and I was like, I don't want to I'm not selling the vagina T-shirt because I will make a giant bag of money, but then I'll rot in hell. And you look back on it, and you see all the comics who sell, they sell the T-shirt where you put the two dots together, and I think it was Vince Morris who sold that shirt that said "fuck off" or something, but his, I think, said "Made in America" or "not made in China." I mean, there can be a great deal of pandering going on when it comes to merch.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want a vagina T-shirt because I felt like I was above it. And it turns out I left a great deal of money on the table. So I made pins that I gave away and cost me money.
Yeah, I've done that with bumper stickers and, shit like that. And even to a certain extent, when I first started selling merch on the road, I bought glass shot glasses. And here's a pro tip. Don't put them in your checked bag. Like, I'm literally on stage, like, is there fucking glass in my shirt? Like,
yeah. Oh man.
And there was. Yes, there was glass in my shirt. But I remember you telling me to say, no, I didn't have my CD yet, my first one when I opened for you, but I told you I was about to do it the following year, and I did. And you said, make sure you sell it for $20. And that always stuck with me. And then about a year or two later, I started opening for Tom. I'm like, okay, that's a thing, because I had this mental block about that's a lot of money for a CD, but people still bought it, man. Like after the show. Yeah, go ahead.
I was told I featured for Kathleen Madigan. We had never met. We've been doing stand-up about the same amount of time. She was much better at the business side of it. I mean, she's a great comic, but she literally, so I was featuring for her. I met her when I auditioned for Last Comic Standing, and she was one of the judges.
Yeah.
And so I distinctly remember meeting her because the first thing she said to me was, tell me you are making at least $5,000 a week doing stand-up. And I said, no, is there anything you could do about that? And she's like, I swear to God, I'll try. And then she had me feature for her, and I had a T-shirt that I was selling for 15, and a CD I was selling for 10. And she goes, Jesus Christ, Jackie, everything's $20. Everything's $20. They're going to buy it. They're not going to buy it. It's going to be $20. You're going to make the exact same amount of money, and you're going to have to carry less items around. And she was entirely correct. Whether I made $200 or $600, I would have made. I would have sold the same number of items and made this. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Oh, it was. The first time I really had a crazy successful merch night, I was doing a string of one-nighters with Segura. We were at Good Nights in Raleigh doing 2 shows.
Also a Helium now.
Yeah, owned by.
As is Cap City.
Yeah, Cap City, yep. And he's like, make sure you sell for 20, because I was like weird about it. I'm like, I'm the opening act. $20 is a lot for a CD because iTunes was the thing, you know. And then I sold, I think, between 50 and 60 CDs at $20 a piece in one night. And I was like, holy shit, what a game changer. What a game changer.
Especially if you're opening for someone like I was with Maria and you were with Segura, where, well, I know Maria often doesn't have any merch. Mm-hmm. And people are like, well, I want to give someone some money. I had such a good time. And guess who was the recipient of that largesse? This one, right here. Right
okay.
Here.
I want to give someone some money.
Yeah, I mean, essentially people come out of a show saying that they had a really good time. They kind of want a memento. Like, I mean, it's what we learned from bands in the 90s, because when I started doing stand-up, comics didn't even have CDs. They didn't even have tapes or anything, right? First of all, it was the 80s. Second of all, it was considered hacky to sell anything, ever. And so, and the guys who did, and they were all guys, because there were, there might have been women, but I never got to meet them because it was like a herd mentality. They didn't want the women near any other women because it was hard to harass them if we were together, because we could make eye contact. And go, what the fuck is happening? Anyway, so I have since learned, it's one of the greatest things about comedy now is that, women comics have other women comics to like just make a hairy eyeball with. Who doesn't want a hairy eyeball share? Anyway, but nobody sold any stuff. And so when CDs became a thing, I remember I burned my first CD on my computer and put stickers on them, and the audio was terrible. And so when I re-recorded about half of that album on what is currently my second album, because the first one was just, first of all, someone found it in one of the used bins in a CD store in North Dakota, and they bought it for like $1 or something, right? And then they emailed me.
Still in circulation.
And, they emailed me and they said it was empty. It had literally it would worn out, that it had, and they didn't rip it fast enough or whatever. And I was like, I'm sorry about that. What can I do for you? But it was pretty funny. And the one thing that was left, because when CDs first came to be, you could hide stuff on them, right?
Yeah.
Like you still can. And so I hid my first album, which I burned myself, was called Cake Is Not My Downfall, and 97. I think. And so I burned a text file. So if you played it in your computer and not on a CD player, this text file would come up. And it was a baked chicken recipe. Why not? Why not?
Well, absolutely. Why not? Why not? Okay, so your first album was in 97. When did you start doing stand-up?
84.
84. Mm-hmm. Okay, now you're from Wisconsin, correct?
Mm-hmm. I count the 80s actually as 1 year.
Okay.
I only say 84 when it's usually some dinosaur my same age who's always like, I've been doing stand-up comedy a long time. How long you been doing stand-up? And I always that attitude will always make me go, 1984. When did you start? And they're like, oh, also 1984. Anyway, so, and then usually deflates whatever dinosaur balloon they're blowing up. But I started in 84 in Madison, Wisconsin. I was 19. I was going to college. I
was 19 as well and in college. Yep.
Yeah, I got a 1.8 that semester. I did stand up every night for 8 months, and then the club burned down, and then I had to do essentially mics. I did open mics probably twice a week. There was one, and then the 7 of us who started doing stand up, a couple of the guys were pretty good promoters, and so they started like. And then we started picking up like shitty one-nighters. So, and creating shitty one-nighters.
Okay, hold on. I want to go back for 1 second. So you performed every night for 8 months?
Yeah.
Holy
I got a
shit.
1.8. 1.8.
In Wisconsin?
In Madison, Wisconsin.
Nice.
At a club called the Comedy Cellar underneath just a coke hole called the State Street Infirmary. It was a pool hall and just dirtbagville.
So how did you get the gig right out the gate performing that much?
There was absolutely no, we were the only comics and I was the only woman. And so we all got to go up all the time and I made $10 a week. And the club was owned by Sam Kinnison's brother, Bill Kinnison.
Oh, wasn't Bill his manager for a long time there?
He was
Because his brother
he was
wrote
on the
a
teat.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah, his brother, is that the brother that, his book's called Brother Sam. I just forget what
that's
brother
my
wrote
Bill.
it. Oh,
That's
okay.
from Bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. And Sam was a piece of work and Bill was a piece of work and I was easily the youngest 19-year-old, much like anyone who starts doing comedy at that age. You don't know what you're getting into. It's, I think about like some of the comics who started at 16, Swartzen and
Chappelle was 14.
Right. Chris Rock comes to mind.
Todd Glass was 15 or 16.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, and it can ruin you. I mean, it is like some of those guys, like your expectations of how human interaction should exist. Like what is funny, what is acceptable, what is, you're hanging out with people in their 30s who are, for the most part, alcoholics and drug abusers and, or at least they were in my case. I mean, not always. I'm sure that there's some Mormon comedy club where everybody is just, and then we're going to go out and we're not going to have coffee. Anyway,
Yeah.
So
here's my Bed Bath & Beyond material and...
And so, but it was, the club burned down and they opened a new club by a guy named Victor in Madison a couple of years later because I wanted to quit college and just move somewhere and do stand up. And my sister was like, nope. And it turns out she is the boss of me. Very weird.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
now, you have a lot of older siblings, right?
Yeah, I have 5.
Is that what kind of pointed you towards comedy? Was like your family funny? Like, okay, so you're doing stand up at 19 and you want to do stand up. Like, what took you to that point?
Oh, I know. Here's the thing. I didn't even know what stand up was. I was raised to be a salesperson.
Okay, yeah,
and so
you have jokes, you have some really funny stuff about that from your father.
Yeah, and it was so we never listened to stand up. We listened to motivational speakers when I was a kid. A little sell the sizzle, not the steak, kind of business. And I remember my dad. He was like, he got a weird new job selling mausoleums or mortuary somethings, and he was like, I got to practice the pitch on somebody. Will you sit here and listen to me practice the pitch? And I was like. I was 15 and it was not, and he ran the rap and it was fine, but I was like, what is happening? This is a glimpse into his life. And he didn't keep that job very long. He was like, I don't want to sell this to people. People are dying and whatever. So
mausoleum salesman, it wasn't really a big market in the
yeah. So I wanted to act. I wanted to. And, my parents were like, and quite honestly, I wanted to be a forest ranger in high school. And all of my siblings were like, no, you should be a lawyer. And I was like, really? Oh, okay. All right. And because they're a big fan of delegating. All of my older siblings like to delegate. And guess who got delegated the most? Their youngest sibling. That would be me. And
Yep.
so
Yep. That's a family. That's a family right there.
yeah, it's very beautiful. So I was 19. We went and saw stand up. It was Sam Kinison performing, and I heckled.
Oh, nice. I mean, not nice, but I love stories.
It's an indictment. It's an indictment against everyone who's ever heckled me, as I deserve it.
Was this in a comedy club? Mm-hmm. What did you say?
It wasn't. It was just. It was. First of all, even as a woman comic, there's nothing worse than a woman heckler because it doesn't matter. The audience is always on the side of the heckler. They're like, "Aw, she's drunk and stupid. Leave her alone." And I was drunk and stupid. And Kinison was having a hard set. It wasn't a good set. Mm-hmm. It was probably 3 months before he blew up.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It was 3 months before he did Letterman.
Oh, wow.
Or 3 months after, I forget. Anyway, but I wouldn't shut up. And finally the manager came over and said, "You have to shut up. If you don't shut up, I'm going to kick you out. Open mic is on Sundays." And so I came back 3 weeks later and did open mic. And it was, I assume it's what heroin feels like if you really like heroin.
Yes. Okay, so was that your very first set, that open mic after you heckled Sam?
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. So how'd that set go?
I have friends who saw it who were like, "Huh, all right." And then
that's so true.
Well, how could it? But it was, I must have gotten some sort of positive reinforcement because they were like, "You can come back." And 2 weeks later, I was on the roster.
Wow.
I was getting sets every night.
That's so rare. That's so like unheard of.
Well, that's what Bill told us. Bill was like, this is invaluable. And I was like, you know what? I could put a value on it. You could actually pay me something.
Yes, there is a value on this. Yes, correct.
I'm going to tell my dog to shut up.
Yeah.
The dog's name is Gordy.
Gorny?
Gordy, as in Gordon.
Gordy. Ah, okay. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, he came from the pound with that name.
Yeah, after 8 years, you can't throw a new name on a dog.
Yeah, he doesn't need it.
Do you remember any of your earliest material? Like, do you remember what a couple things
yes.
you said those very first sets?
Sure. It was, I mean, there were jokes that I actually wrote in those 8 months. And see, Bill was right. He was right. It was invaluable to do stand-up every single night for 8 months. I mean, it was easily 3 years worth of experience.
Yeah, that's a lot of stage time, especially
so much,
right out the gate too.
Right. And so I remember I was probably 2.5 months in, and I did a bit, and the guy who was managing the club for Bill was a guy who'd been around stand-up for 10 years or so, right? He'd been around, and he said, "This is your first signature bit. This is something that really feels like you did it." And then there was, but when you first start doing stand-up, right, you swear a lot. You're a monkey throwing poop at the wall.
Yeah, you tend to be a little dirtier for no reason, kind of, because you don't really know any better. You think people want to hear.
Well, you're scared,
like
and you're just trying to get a reaction for a lot of it.
Yeah,
you know?
Any sort of reaction. If you make a sound, I'll be happy.
Yeah, right. And so, so that's all well and good, but the first bit that I really got some traction was there was a sort of an anti-sexual assault pamphlet that the University of Wisconsin-Madison put out, and I read excerpts from it and then was sarcastic. That was my signature bit that came out those first in that first month or whatever.
What were you going to college for?
I ended up, after 3 years, they made me pick a major. And so I go in, and the guy's like, "You got to pick one." And I said, "What's it look like?" And he said, "You are one credit closer to graduation degree." And I said, "Well, then I am a poli-sci major, my friend." And so it came to pass.
You and I have a very similar situation there. I majored in public relations, but only because my college roommate's girlfriend told me it was easy and you could take bullshit classes. And since I was already I dove into stand-up so heavily. I was like, cool, easy classes, bullshit. I could do stand-up, done. I'm a PR major. It was as simple as that.
That's
It was as simple as that.
And the people say, like, I know a lot of comics who quit and didn't finish college and stuff like that. I will say that in retrospect, I am glad that I finished. And there's so many things about that time where you're like, I got so much self-esteem. I got so much sense of self. I had it kind of saved my life in so many ways, right? Mm-hmm. But it also stalled it. I decided not to do anything but stand-up comedy. Like, I was 30 years old working at a Kinko's, making $5.95 an hour, I think it was.
Yeah.
And in Minneapolis, when I moved there in 1990. And I was like, and my sister was like, Jackie, you could get a job, a real job that paid a real. And I was like, it'll take all of my creative energy. I can't do it. I don't, and that's true of sales. I will say that sales it takes all your performance energy out of you. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like doing warm up for TV shows. And I suspect, though this is not entirely true, because I see Lori Kilmartin and Brian Kiley as a couple of examples of people who are in writers' rooms all day long and then still do stand-up a lot. Mm-hmm.
Laurie, I just had her on a few weeks ago. That was a really, really fun interview as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. Like I'm getting such great guests. It's been like a blast.
That's great. Yeah, it's super fun.
Yeah. So okay. So you started with 6 other guys. You said there were like 7 of you.
Yeah.
Are they still doing it? Any of those 6 still out there?
I know. I've rehooked up with 2 of them on Facebook and Twitter.
Okay.
That stopped. One guy. God, whatever happened to that guy? We'll never know. And then 2 guys. So Steve Marmel is married. He married Judy Levity, whatever. So he married someone who's in the business,
in the industry, yeah,
in the industry, producing, managerial side. Anyway, so Steve went down. He did a lot of writing and stuff like that. So
okay, cool.
But he had been doing stand-up. He had been driving to Chicago. Him and Eric Alver and this guy Hannes Finney had all been driving to Chicago doing open mics and stuff for about a year before me. So they sort of knew what they were doing to some extent. And when the club closed and when we graduated, or when I graduated, and I think they graduated close behind, I think Steve is actually like a year younger than I am, but had been doing it longer. But they all decided to move to Chicago. And I was like, oh, you guys are going to Chicago? I'm getting the hell away from this. I'm going to Minneapolis. So I still know Steve and Hannes. And,
okay.
Yeah. And, yeah. So then I moved to Minneapolis and sort of, when you move to a new town, you got to reinvent the wheel a little bit. You got to prove that you're funny again. You got to, but if you are funny, you move faster,
That is true. I did the New York scene for a year, but I didn't utilize it like I should at all. And it just was not a fun year.
Did you get mad? Did you get mad? Did you get entitled? I was a big fucking deal in Philly.
I did have a little bit of that mentality, but I was also like starting to get more and more paid work at clubs on the weekends in like the middle spot. So like I would feature on the road, go to New York, and then like be told I can't do this guy's bar show. And this guy's been doing stand up for like 8 months and I'm at year 8. And I'm like, this is just fucking with my head. Like,
right.
I'm better than this. It's like, I'm a working comic and you're telling me I can't do your shitty bar open mic.
It's literally the thing that kills most people's sort of bigger careers in LA and New York is luckily when I moved to LA, I was told a couple of great things. One, you have to choose to like it, because if you don't want to like it, plenty of things not to like. Second thing is nobody knows who you are.
Yep.
Even though you work the road 35 weeks a year, 40 weeks a year, nobody cares. But if you're willing to, and if you're willing to do these, like whenever anyone would, like when I moved to LA, it was in 97. And in 97, to do a coffee shop gig or a hat shop or a bar gig, they were like, do you have a tape? And I was like, yes. Let me use my finite resources to get you a VHS tape to go and do this weird bar gig. But I had been warned not to get mad about it. And because and so I would get so Largo started, I think, in 97. And it was this fancy alt thing, right? Mm-hmm. And luckily my roommate at the time, she was like, she was the first one to sort of explain to me that these weren't open mics. There was like, if you get on the Largo show, you're in front of half of the middle management of Los Angeles in movies and television. Do you want a writer's job? Do you want an acting job? Do you want a voiceover job? Do you want to work? Do you want an agent? Do you want a manager? You want to get up at Largo. The fact that it doesn't pay, please don't care. Mm-hmm. The fact that he wants a tape, please don't care. Just calm down. Remember that you have to. And the thing is so I would go up at these lesser things, I would go to the open mics, and a lot of I knew a guy who moved after me, and he was like, wait, so I have to buy something at this coffee shop to go up? And I was like, yeah. He said, for an open mic. And I said, but it's an open mic with the comics who book these other weird shows that you also won't get paid at. He's like, those are other open mics. And I was like, they're not. They're booked showcase shows. And if you could, and the thing is it's this thing where you have to reinvent the wheel. Yep. And I couldn't do it when I tried to move to New York. I tried to move to New York in 89. And I couldn't afford it. Because it was all bringers. You couldn't flyer and get sets when I moved there. You could only do bringers unless you could hang out for a month or so. Then they might have let me go up, but I didn't last. I failed the Frank Sinatra song.
Yeah. So how long were you in New York for?
Probably 5 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a job at a place called Chubb Life Insurance. I shared, a friend of mine had just gotten married, and I slept on their couch in their one-bedroom apartment in Weehawken in 1989.
Oh, I lived in Hoboken when I did the New York scene, so I was one town beneath Weehawken.
What year was that?
2011.
Yeah, in 1989, Weehawken was not cool. And nobody, and so I would take the path into the World Trade Center and then go to this ridiculous, I was like in the secretarial pool, and I lasted that job 3 weeks and I couldn't face it. And so I told them my mom was dying of cancer. I couldn't even, I didn't have the guts to just quit the job. And the guy did not believe me.
Sorry guys, I'm getting a puppy. I gotta.
Right, it's the dog excuse for 1989. Anyway.
So you started in Wisconsin. You hit the pavement hard. You're performing every night for 8 months. Then how many years in did you move to Minneapolis?
I graduated in 88. So so that would have been the June of 88 I graduate. I spend the next 6 months working. I went to Cape Cod, Provincetown to make enough money to go to Europe for a couple of months. And then I went on an exchange thing where I could work in London for 3 months. And so by the winter, I think I was back in Wisconsin by, I think, January of 89. And then I didn't know where I was going to go. I thought I was like, I kind of want to go to Minneapolis. So I was doing open mics in Milwaukee. And I was, doing whatever one-nighters I could sort of pick up in Wisconsin in 89. And then a friend of mine moved to Minneapolis. She was like, "Do you want to move to Minneapolis with me and be roomies?" And so I had someone to move with. I tend to move places where there's someone else has found an apartment.
That takes a lot of the legwork off the table. That's not a bad strategy.
It was and then I moved to LA in 97. So I moved there in January. I think it was January of 90, or maybe it was the summer of the spring of 90. And then by 91, I had a decent day job. But that first year I worked at Kinko's and it was the worst.
Did you really cut your teeth in Minneapolis, you think? Is that where you really felt yourself grow as a comic?
That was my first lesson in reinventing myself. Mm-hmm. You know, because I was like, no, I've been doing it like, off and on for 6 years, except for that I do really count the 80s as like those 8 months. That was 1 year, that was, and then the other 4 months of that 1 year would be spread over those 6 years.
Yes.
So it was an intensive, and then the following 6 years were just as much stage time as I could get, but it was nothing like that. So I moved to Minneapolis and I'd start doing open mics. The guy, Scott Hansen, owns 5 clubs in 1990 in Minneapolis. He owned 5 fucking clubs.
All A rooms?
All A rooms, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Wait, actually, one was a B room out of town. He ended up running it into the ground, blowing it up. He, literally, the guy had the mentality of Jabba the Hutt. It was, he used to pit comics against each other. He used to, he lowballed everybody. He ended up, there was all kinds of dodgy money shit. And it was, and I would just, you could go to like 3 or 4 he had open mics in like 3 of the clubs. But he also, if you worked any other clubs, he wouldn't let you work. It was a power play. He was bored. He would do these things. The first, in Minnesota, hunting season opens. It's a big deal. It's a big weekend.
Same here in Pennsylvania.
Lot of widows, hunting widows coming out to the clubs. And, and so Scott would always say, nobody else can do hunting jokes this weekend, just me. Jesus. So what I saw a lot of kinds of comedy with him with those first 2 or 3 years I was there that I didn't want to be. That's what I learned. I learned what I didn't want out of stand-up comedy. But he brought in amazing headliners. That's where I first saw Dana Gould.
Oh.
And I met Maria. We became friends in 92.
Oh, that's awesome. So who else? Okay, so when you moved to Minneapolis, who else was in the scene that you became buddies with that we would know now? Who else was around then? Because a lot of great comics came out of that scene.
Name them. I literally because all I can think are the younger guys who came up through Acme, which opened in 92.
Oh, okay. I guess my time
because
frame was
Lewis and Scott were partners. It was not amicable.
Okay,
Lewis opened up another club, and it's the greatest club in the world.
Swardson, Hedberg, Chad Daniels, all spent a lot of time up there, correct?
Yeah. Swartson's probably 2 generations one generation under me, and Chad's probably 2 generations under me.
Okay.
But Hedberg, he was more Florida and Seattle, but I knew him, and we were, we were friends, but not friends, right? We were like, I was at his house a couple of times with his girlfriend before he got married, to Lynn. And then, but I would hang out with his girlfriend, whose name I cannot remember. So how close of friends were we, Pat? Anyway, but the thing is, Mitch. Yeah. So I knew Mitch and, and then a bunch of guys that became writers, like, Greg Fiddler wrote for, Letterman and then Leno and then, there are a bunch of guys like that nobody knows. Anyway, but the younger guys that are really funny are, the guys that I don't think John Bush is still doing it. Nobody knows him. Road guy, KP Anderson, writer guy. But yeah, so I know the sort of the fans like Chad and Pete Lee.
Yeah.
And
I know Pete.
yeah, they're both Minneapolis comics, and Tracy Ashley, Minneapolis comic. And,
Yeah, we worked at Helium together before a long, long time ago. I haven't seen her in a long time though.
well, she was writing now, and she had a couple of banner years. Her and Pete both had a couple of banner years in colleges, and but I'm still. I think I'm still good friends. I would say I'm good friends with Chad Daniels. It's I know that I text him on a regular basis and go, "What's happening?" And so what should I do? Because it's funny because Louis Lee is always like, "You should do your career like Chad Daniels," and I'm like, first of all, I'm 10 years older than Chad Daniels and not a boy.
What does that mean? Do his career like him? Like what is he?
I don't know. If I knew, I would totally do it, right?
Like move to Fergus Falls and have some teenagers at this point? Like what do you
Right. Reject Los Angeles entirely because you don't want to deal?
Yeah. So you've been in LA since 97 the whole time? Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah. And just just working the road and getting to and doing sets here and then but it was probably it had to be like 1999 or 2000 when I decided that I would like an entire life, Pat House. That I didn't, you know how like male comics get to get married and have kids and then their wives take care of those kids? Right about 99, I was like, what if I had a boyfriend? What if I just stopped getting laid on the road and just tried to meet somebody who wanted to, I don't know, go see a movie when I was in town? And I didn't want to get married. I didn't necessarily want to have kids. I hadn't met anyone that I was willing to breed with because I knew that I would, every guy that I had ever had a crush on, which was a terrible barometer, by the way. That's not who you want to marry, is the male comics you have crushes on because you're like, that guy's, here, I was talking to Lori about like the two different kinds of comics. There's comics that I have crushes on that I know I'm as funny as or funnier than. Mm-hmm. And then there's the guys that I don't have crushes on because they're funnier than I am.
Okay, so that's your like bar there. You're like, they're really funny. I can't let myself.
I didn't know. I didn't know that I had that bar until I kind of looked at it in retrospect because the Jackie and Laurie show is entirely navel gazing. It's just a 1 hour of navel gazing every week about stand-up comedy in our careers and how it's affected our lives.
Well, that's why I listen to the podcast because I love hearing you guys just talk shop. It's like one of my favorite things. I say it pretty much every episode because this is where this podcast came from. Like we're not on the road, we're not in the green room, but if you and I were on the road together right now, we'd be having this conversation in the green room. Yeah. So this is exactly where the podcast came from because this is my way to talk to comics one-on-one. And I love talking about the early days and how we all got into this. So that's, and you guys talk about comedy on your podcast. That's exactly what I want to do.
It's what Lori was like, those podcasts where two middle-aged white guys talk about stand-up? Do you want to do that, but not be two middle-aged white guys? And I was like, so it's not really a step forward for the genre, but it is a lateral move. And
you've been doing that one 5 years now?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
And guys have not taken a Monday off? Is that still?
Yeah, we did actually when her mom died.
Oh, okay.
I think we did 2 weeks where we did do podcasts.
Okay.
So, but we did when we first start recording, I've been doing the Dork Forest for so long. Lori wanted to do a bunch of episodes and put them in the can before we released them. And then by the time we had done like 7 of them, she was like, let's just start over. We'll just go. And so we have these 7 unaired episodes. And so what we did was we aired the first 2 in the 2 weeks that she took off.
Oh, okay, cool. So you had them sitting there. That's the whole point.
Right. And then the other 5 are on our Patreon and our Patreon, literally, it's mostly comics who listen to this thing. So, comics and people who love comedy so much they want to nerd out about comedy. That's listens to it's like
the same people listening to mine. I mean,
right.
I have talked to so many comics about such specific things. I'm like, who wants to listen to this? But then I do.
Right. Right. And it's and so we don't have any tiers on our Patreon because a lot of them are features. And we're like, there's no money in stand-up comedy as a feature. So it's $1 a month, right? I was like, people have $12, right? That's $12 a year. Yeah, you have that. And if you do $5 a month, that's you get free links to our Zoom shows now too. But the thing is so we don't do any content on the Patreon except for I put those 5 episodes up. And then if I do a Sunday show, a Sunday Zoom show, and Lori will sometimes do a workout show, we'll put free links to those shows in there.
Oh, cool. I was talking to actually a friend of mine, Philly comic Rachel Fogletto, is doing a show on Monday.
Nice.
Her Laurie's Flappers thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right. No, yeah. She's doing the Comic of the Week show. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, once a month at Flappers for Zoom. It started out as just a way to get Flappers to make some money. And, we try to pick like the most famous of the comics of the week that we've had. Like the last one was with Judy Gold. Aparna's going to do the next one. Maria's done a couple of them. And it's just, we're like, hey, we got to sell some tickets so that they can reopen. Because right now they're selling toilet paper out of their back door. So,
So do you write every day? You still writing every day? How has the pandemic affected your writing? Let's start there.
Well, I do most of my writing on stage, right? So, so which means that almost immediately I had to start doing shows online.
Just to keep the flow going.
Yeah, because I can't. Well, first of all, I was supposed to record. We're 11 months into this thing. We're February 19th, right? So I was supposed to record my album in November, and then it got pushed to December, and then it got pushed to March, and now it's I'm not going to even schedule the damn thing till I get vaccinated. And so, to what I had to do immediately was I had to make sure I was still practicing the set, right? So when we went into pandemic, I had probably an hour of material with 15 minutes of it that needed to be tightened up for the album. And now we're 11 months into the pandemic, and I have about an hour and a half of material, and about 15 minutes of it needs to be tightened up. So, and when we go back to brick and mortar face-to-face stand-up, the timing's going to change.
Oh, it's going to be
It'll be different.
Oh God, yeah. And it's I've mentioned it before on the podcast because all the comics, obviously, we all got fucked by the pandemic big time. But years ago, way early in my career, it's so funny how quickly we get rusty if we're not in the groove. I was hosting for Greg Giraldo, and he goes, man, I haven't done stand-up in forever. And I go, how long's forever? And he goes, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. And I was like, that is forever in comic time.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes 2 or 3 days. My husband will go, hey, why don't you pick up a set somewhere? Because the other thing is I'm a little grumpy if I don't do enough stand-up, right?
That is so true. I had the weirdest roller coaster. Like when we were all told, hey, it's just stay at home for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks. I was writing feverishly. I was writing. And then, okay, things weren't open, so I'm still writing. I wrote like a monster, more than ever, for 2 months. And then come May, it was pretty evident shit was not coming back anytime soon. Then I crashed and burned and got super depressed for a while and didn't even touch my notebook for 2 or 3 months.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was weird.
I mean, there's just different ways of processing the problem, And it was blessedly, Maria wants to perform for one other person.
Yeah.
So she will tweet out, it's when we would go on the road together for the first 10 years, right? From 2001 to 2011. The way we did Joke Machine was we would do 20-minute bursts at each other. Mm-hmm. And then you would essentially write down any ideas that you had for directions a joke might take, or if you had a tag idea. The only rule of Joke Machine is you cannot say to another person, why would you do a joke about that? Or that's a terrible premise, right? That's the only rule. Because that doesn't make any sense. That's not helpful at all. What you could do is what you have to say instead is there's something there. That's even if you have no idea what that is or a direction to go in. But we would do 20-minute bursts at each other. And eventually she got sort of sick of me not laughing enough. And so, and she was like, and I would laugh because she would come up with, new lines, new timing, and it's a masterclass watching somebody do material at you. Mm-hmm. Just doing material back and forth. That's a learning experience too. So she would start tweeting out when Twitter was invented. She'd be like, "Hey, does anyone want to meet me for a cup of coffee in the middle of Dayton, Ohio, at like 2:00, and we'll go to a Starbucks and I'll buy you a scone, and you'll listen to me do 45 minutes." And of course, hundreds of people, and then she'd pick someone, DM them, and then just dash off. And she'd come back to the hotel, and we'd meet for dinner. And she'd be like, "It went pretty well," or "It was all right. There was some nodding," and but she also, it's kind of a social thing too. So anyway, in March 13th or 15th was was my last road gig. It was at Bloomington Comedy Attic. I fly home. By the following Monday, I was doing a Zoom show, and I didn't know how to do it, but so I have like a half an hour of new material. Some of it, I wonder if it'll play,
Yes.
Post-pandemic. But I think with some tweaking, and there's a bit before pandemic that I wonder if it'll play too. Right? Like a bit that's now 3 freaking years old.
That's the crazy part. Stuff before the pandemic that was brand new was so exciting, but I shelved it for a year, and it's like it's still brand new, but it's more than a year old, but I haven't touched it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, I don't know, man. It was there were a bunch of people who thought that the pandemic was going to be handled in a timely fashion, right? They thought it was going to be over. Like, they had never read anything about the pandemic of 1918. They'd never even heard of it. They didn't even remember Mr. Gower's son died of it in It's a Wonderful Life. And so they were like, it'll be done in 3 months. This Donald Trump's got this. And you're like, who were you putting here? What? Oh, okay. And but I bought a year of Zoom in March. And by the way, I bought the fanciest Zoom package because I didn't know what the hell it was. But it turns out, because I just called him because it's coming up in March, I was like, "Hey, can I not have a package that's $166 a month?"
I heard you talk about that on the one podcast this morning.
And I'll tell you something. They told me that that's the only package that they accept your phone calls. Everybody else has to do email, or like if you have technical problems, you have to email them and wait a week.
But if you have this package, you have the red phone in the Oval Office right to the...
Yeah, for $166 a month. And the thing is I have 10 licenses. I said... And I can write it off, and my husband needs it because he's a teacher, so he can, he needs another. So I have 2 slots, and then Carmen Morales said, "I'll buy a slot." And so I could sell slots, because if you're an administrator on my Zoom, you can call them. And but I don't want to go in the business of selling slots for Zoom. Anyway.
No, but times are different right now, so we're all
right.
I actually, when everything shut down, I was delivering pizzas, but I had the same bartending and restaurant job forever, so it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. But I'd never delivered pizzas before, and I have a joke about it. But the gist of it is like, I'm 36 years old. I'm delivering pizzas in a global pandemic. All my gigs are gone. I'm happy to have a job. I go to a house. They are like, "Do you want to come in for a drink?" I'm like, "Sure." So I have a drink with them. They give me a bottle of booze to take with me, and then they tip me $40 on $40. And I'm like, this shit is more lucrative than stand-up. I might have to quit comedy to deliver fucking pizza.
You went into somebody's house during a pandemic?
I knew them. They were friends. Oh, they're regulars. I mean, the answer is yes, but it was masked up.
It turned out you lived. But
yeah, we all lived. We're all still here.
Yeah. But it's
But the joke of it is like, man, I am quitting comedy to deliver pizza.
No, I know.
I did one delivery. I have $40 in my pocket. It's not a bad gig.
No, and if you're making feature money, that's double what you make for a show. So
pretty much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Has the feature rate always been the same ever since you've been doing it?
Yeah,
that's what I hear from a lot of people.
Feature rate has not gone up. Turns out gas prices have. And you know what? You know what's funny is in 1990, the headliners were like, "Yeah, that's what I used to get paid for featuring in the late 70s." And I was like, Jesus Christ, someone raise the price for stand-ups. Grossman isn't a really, really good businessman, but he doesn't book me often enough. Mm-hmm. And he now owns 1,100 stand-up comedy clubs. And I would like, dude, if that's 11 weeks of work, I would like all of it. And I would like a fair wage. And, we're going to come out of this pandemic and I'm going to be like, I just need to run, for my sound exchange to record the album.
Yeah.
I need to run the material. So what am I going to work for? I'm already, I don't want to lowball myself. And I know that especially the independent comedy clubs, granted, they probably all got PPE grants and stuff, but.
Mm-hmm. Do you have okay, so you have 4 albums, correct?
Yeah. Circus People, Bread,
yep.
Horcrux, Hero. Yeah.
Did you record them all at different spots?
No, all Acme.
Oh, all Acme? Okay. All right. I've heard, I knew that was your home club, and it's one of the clubs I've never been, but I've heard so many amazing things about that room. So many amazing comics are just like, that room is incredible.
The guy knows how to do it. And when we, in March, the first thing I did was I called him up and I was like, what are you going to do? And he's like, I don't know. And I said, I'm doing these Zoom shows. This is the second week of quarantine for me. I said, do you want me to host Zoom shows? And I'll get local comics like Pete and Chad and any, Mary Mack and Tim Harmston and, all these people to come and Tommy Ryman to do sets. And we'll sell tickets. You have an email list. You can say, for $10, you can sit in your house and watch stand-up comedy and I'll host them. And we did it for like a month or 5 weeks. And then he was given an open, he could open.
Okay.
And so he's at a third with people in the room, but you could still buy Zoom tickets.
So they were doing a live feed of the show.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So he's got whatever, 35 or 60 people in the room seats like 220. And then he has a 4-camera setup, which is all 4K. It's all HD. And so, granted, he pushes it to Zoom, but you buy a Zoom and you can hear the audience laugh. Like I've done 2 guest sets, Zoom guest sets into the room where they lower the screen and essentially, and this is a problem. They need to move the screen because, so the MC goes up, he does his 10-15, right? And he goes, we gotta treat you guys. We got a Zoom guestie. And then he stands next to the thing going, 12 seconds. And then I pop up, I do my and my opening joke is always going to be, did you guys leave the house so you could avoid Zoom? Because Zoom is following you. There is only Zoom. And there's only Victor Von Zoom. And then I say, thanks a lot. I go away. MC comes back. He's got to wait another 12 seconds.
Slowly rise back up.
And now you're featured act. Bam. And so it completely screws with the flow of the show. But if he had a sort of if he had a screen set up, just on a different side, a different corner of the room, that the audience could just cheat and just watch that screen, it would solve his 12-second problem. But it's not my problem. I ruined the flow of Pete Lee doing a live show, but that's not my fault. Pete Lee said I could do the guesties.
You know what? You want to hear something crazy? I got bumped from a Zoom show 2 weeks ago. I went to Temple University, and I got an email from a woman who's like, "Hey, would you be able to do a 15-minute Zoom comedy show? We want Philly related material and jokes about Temple University." I'm like, "Holy crap, this is so specific, but I can do this." When I first started, half of my act were Philly and Temple jokes.
Right.
So she never confirmed the show. I will give her that. But her and I had a back and forth, and she made it seem like it was a done deal. So I went to confirm. And I go, "Hey, are we still on for this date?" She goes, "Oh, I got another comic." I'm like, "Who the fuck else has 15 minutes of Temple and Philly material?" So I did not have the gig, but this was so specific. And then turns out, nope, they still got somebody else, and I cannot imagine who it is or how that happened with those specific instructions.
Yeah, I've done several corporates, and the weird thing is that the corporates they're fine, right? I mean, I've done birthday parties and just sort of more cameo kind of things, except for I don't have a cameo.
Mm-hmm.
Though I'm told, like, Proops has a cameo. I was like, dude, what's your like for $20? You're willing to sing happy birthday to somebody? And he's going to come do the Dork Forest, and I think on Thursday, we're going to record. His dorkdoms are always fascinating. He did Roman history once. He did the history of baseball another time.
Yeah, the baseball thing's big with.
Well,
with
this
him.
time he wanted to just do the history of the Negro League, and I was like, fine. I don't know anything about that either. I did one yesterday about Batman, and turns out I don't know anything about Batman. And
who was the guest?
A game designer by the guy name of Scott Rogers.
Okay.
Yeah, he's an Imagineer at Disney and a game designer. Yeah.
Now, which episodes of the Dork Forest have been your favorite? Anyone stand out to you?
In quarantine, it's Guy Branum. Guy Branum, like probably a month into quarantine, I ran out of face-to-face Dork Forests, so I had to do an interview. I had to start doing them on Zoom, and he came on and told the story of some weird-ass family from England called the Mitford sisters, and there were 6 of them and a brother, and every morning the Earl of Mitford, or whatever the fuck his name was, would say to each of he'd pick one of his kids, and he'd make the other 5 hunt them like a fox on horseback. And you're like, what? And so they all grew up to be crazy, right? They all grew up. One of them ended up actually, the most successful was the Duchess of Devonshire. But one of them dated Hitler.
Oh, curveball. See, I like misdirection. Did not see that coming.
And here's the third one that I remember offhand, which is because the whole episode is fascinating, but these are the 3 I remember. One dated Hitler, one ended up being the Duchess of Devonshire, and the third one ended up teaching law at Berkeley and taught Hillary Clinton.
Wow.
Yeah. How weird is that?
That is pretty fucking bizarre. All of that there was a lot of misdirection in that story.
Yeah, there's so many different ways, and there's so many great episodes of the Dork Forest that there's no, like, this Batman episode is great. I just did, this week's episode is about a giant robot anime and action figures called Mecha, and it's a game designer guy in Tokyo, and it's on there. It's on my the Dork Forest YouTube channel, and he shows us his action figures. And it's pretty awesome.
The ones I've listened to, I tend to like. I'm a huge music freak, so with the Dork Forest, I've listened to.
Yeah.
Like Brian Posehn and metal. Ryan Connor, who you had, was my old roommate. He was the Smashing Pumpkins fanatic.
Yeah. Did you hear the one about Fleetwood Mac where I go? Who's the lead singer of Fleetwood Mac? Who's the woman?
Stevie Nicks.
Stevie Nicks. Okay, so she's talking about Stevie Nicks, and I was like, Stevie Nicks is in Fleetwood Mac? So this is something you should know about me, is I don't know anything about music. And
yeah,
so,
you've said that in all those episodes.
It's because it usually is either prior to or following me saying something like, what band was Ozzy Osbourne in? Or Joni Mitchell's still alive? These are things I remember saying out loud and other people going, what's happening? And me mixing up David Bowie and the guy who did this in the 80s. Remember that guy? There was another guy with blonde hair and
Billy Idol.
Billy Idol. So they are different people, it turns out. Billy Idol and David Bowie.
Yeah, quite.
And then I had the Zappas on. I've had a couple of the Zappas on, and neither one of them wanted to talk about Frank, which was good, because I don't know anything about Frank Zappa. And though Moon wanted to talk about how mad she was at her dad. And
okay.
And Diva came on and talked about knitting. And my favorite thing about her knitting episode was that because I don't know anything about knitting either. That's the great thing about the Dork Forest. I said, so when you drop a stitch, you got to undo, right? I mean, that's the thing about knitting. You got to undo and redo. That's the big thing about, and Diva goes, no, I just leave it. I think that's what the hat wanted. And I was like, And
that's like a metaphor for life.
What?
That sounds like a metaphor for life. It's very zen. It's what the hat wanted.
It's what the hat wanted. And then what the and then it was oh God, my mind is a sieve. This is
well, you also had 13 years of this podcast, so I can't imagine it's all on automatic recall, right?
True that. I did have Mark Wade was on. That was a great episode a couple of years ago. He talked about Superman. He's a comic book writer. I did just do 2 sample 20-minute episodes for a guy who's trying to sell the show in Australia.
Oh, nice.
And one of them, he got the greatest guests. I was like, can we also just do 1-hour episodes with these guys? Because the first one was he founded and is the president of a penny farthing bicycle club in London, and they play polo on penny farthing bicycles. Penny farthing bicycles, if you don't remember, are the ones with the giant front wheel. And then you wear a bowler hat, and then you got a polo stick. And the second one was a woman who collected weird, giant goldfishy things called betta fish, or betta.
Yeah, the kind you keep in the small little bowl, right?
They're big. They're
okay.
They're going to be this big, and they're gorgeous. They're 1,000 different colors, and they're like dog shows. So of fish, it's pretty amazing.
Huh. That is pretty cool. What the episode of the Dork Forest that stands out the most to me, and this is just crazy because we all have our neuroses.
Yeah.
Brian Regan and his line anxiety. I listened to that in the car. This is a couple months ago, and I was like, everything he said, I 100% felt.
Yeah, he is a guy who wants there to be a number. He wants there to be a line. Yeah, he's such a great guy.
Oh, he's awesome. But that episode stood out to me because I related to everything he was saying.
Yeah. It's Todd is supposed to have done one about place settings, but I haven't been able to schedule him. Oh well.
That's definitely something Todd would probably be an expert on.
Right. He was on one of the live episodes where he alluded to it. So he only got about 10 minutes of decent talk about, because he was talking about how he likes to, when he would have dinner parties, he would set the table before he went to bed. And then if he got
totally
up in the
sounds
night,
like Todd.
Yeah. And then if he got up in the night to go to the bathroom or something, he would visit the settings.
I've known Todd forever. I'm from Philly. He's from Philly. He was very good to me my whole entire career. He had a joke that still makes me laugh. It's about how, like, if you're bringing food to a party, like fucking cook it at home. You know, like showing up to somebody's home with potatoes. You still have to make mashed potatoes in somebody else's kitchen. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Make that at home.
That's awesome. I liked, and this might be apocryphal, but maybe you talked about it on this show, is after CK admitted what he did, where he had the hard-on blocking the door with the 2 women writer comics, and then he admitted it, and then he took it back, and he was like, "No, but I still want to do stand-up, and I don't want to process it at all, and at all. All right, but so supposedly Todd and Louie were at like the cellar or somewhere, and Todd yells at him across the room, "We don't talk anymore." we don't talk anymore. And I was like, that is such a Todd Glass moment. I hope that that's true.
That sounds like that would be. So I'm going to wind down here. One of my favorite things, I love talking about the early days and the writing, but I also love a good horror story. Is there a particular bomb or nightmare night in your mind that you cringe when you still think about it?
There's so many. The thing is the standard. Yeah, there's the standard heckler joke. My favorite one is the one where a guy told me my heckler story. Like I was featuring. He was a guitar comic headliner guy, and it was probably 1990. We were on the road together, and so we're driving in the car, exchanging heckler stories, and he starts telling me mine, and he was there. And so here's this. It's outstanding. It was like, so what happened is
it was like an out of body experience for him.
Yeah,
the fuck?
We had to pull over and find a payphone so that he could call his wife and tell her, because he was like, the weirdest heckler thing that I ever saw was I was at this show. It was just a four-waller, just at a bar in like 1985, 86. And there was a bunch of comics, and it was me and all the guys that we had just started, running a show out on the Beltline. And I went up, and there were two hecklers in the second row at a high top that wouldn't stop shouting at me. And I was only doing like 10, 12 minutes, and they would not stop. And I tried everything. And then there was another four top in the back that was talking. So I was trying to deal with these two situations, right? And the two guys who wouldn't shut up, I concentrated on them. I get off stage. I'm furious. The set did not go well. And so I walk by the two guys that were at the high top. One of them's passed out now on the table. The other one says something to me as I go past him. And I'm like, nope. And I walk up to the bar and I get a beer. And it's in a mug, and I'm drinking this beer, and the heckler guy follows me to the bar. We're still in the room with the showroom, because it's that kind of club, right?
Yeah.
It's that kind of room. And so I've got my beer, I'm standing at the bar like this, and the heckler guy comes, and he's standing right behind me. And I make a very immature decision. Steve Marmella is on stage, and because the guy at the table was still yelling at me at the bar before he was following me. And Steve, one of the nicest things Steve did in those first 2 years that I know him, he was like, hey man, stop heckling her. She's in the audience now. Heckle me. I'm the one now. And I
almost did a spit take all over my laptop, for real.
And so the guy comes and stands behind me. And so I make a very immature decision that if he talks to me one more time, I'm throwing my beer at him. I'm just going to turn around and whip my beer at him. But he doesn't. Instead, he's standing behind me, and now the bouncer and the bartender both saw this. I didn't. I just heard him. I felt him touch my shoulder. Mm-hmm. But I guess the guy was reaching over my shoulder to grab my breast. Like the hilarity that would be. Yeah. And I usually like people to ask, even at 19. And so I know you think you could just push a girl around, grab a tit if you want, but don't do it. Don't do it. So I turned around and threw my beer at him, missing him completely.
Oh.
Hitting the guy behind him at the bar full in the face. So the heckler's standing here, I'm standing here, guy at the bar soaking wet. Heckler picks up that guy's drink and throws it at me. So now I am soaking wet. And so I punched him, but I forgot that I was still holding the beer mug. So I clocked him with the beer mug, and he drops. And he gets back up, and he's screaming, calling me a dyke, and then he's going to beat the shit out of me. And I, literally, this is one of the greatest lines. It's not great, but it's kind of great. Because remember, it was 1985. And I said, you got a problem with homosexuality, faggot? Which is not the most charming way to put that, but we were all heightened, and
it's a moment.
And that word was used a lot more often back then, especially on stage or in the Kinnison crowd. So I had heard that line, that term a great deal. I didn't entirely know what it was. I believe I was still a virgin at that point. So, and so he gets up and I was like, go ahead and hit me. Go ahead and hit me. And we were both removed from that place of business. And because it was not a romantic comedy, we did not get together. We never saw each other again. But get this. So that's 1985. 6-7 years later, the guy, the guitar comic I'm working with, starts telling me that story. He was the guy I hit with the beer.
No shit.
No shit. And I was like, what? You were that guy? And he was like, that was you? And because I had thought that he had thrown the drink at me. He's like, no, the heckler guy threw that drink at you. And for 6 years, I had been telling that story incorrectly.
Oh, that's that's awesome. I love, everybody has these kind of stories in their arsenal. And so I try to get one out of everybody. That was awesome.
That's my favorite one. My least favorite one happened a little over a year ago at the Zanies in Rosemont, where
I never did that one. I just did downtown Chicago and Nashville. I haven't done the Rosemont one.
I've never got to do Nashville. I'd love that. The downtown one is better than the Rosemont one, and the manager was super young guy, kind of new, and this woman for her birthday came with her boyfriend or husband who looked exactly like Leonid Brezhnev. Why do I know that? Why is that face in my head? Anyway, so, and she had watched, it was her birthday, and she wanted to heckle a left-wing liberal. Even though I don't do any political material, she wanted to come and heckle, and so they paid extra to sit in the front row, and the manager let them. He didn't know how to not let them. He didn't know how to say, "Oh, this is probably not going to end well."
Yeah, this is.
It turns out you're not at a rally. You're actually coming to ruin the show for, by the way, a corporate that had paid extra. Who I didn't end up walking. I like to think of it as she ended up walking, and so. But here's the thing: they're sitting in the front row. You know, they MC the feature, they exchange a little bit with it, but it's super tense. So I get up, I try to just do my act, and then she's whispering at me, she's saying shit to me, and so I give her a little bit of attention, and then I try to go back to my act, and she keeps whispering, and she's like literally just going, "Do you like my hat? Do you like my hat? Isn't he great? Isn't Trump great? You're really fat. Did you know that?" And she's just like doing this to me for like 15 minutes. And so occasionally I can't even think of my next fucking joke because it's hard to think, right? And so, and I'm like, you gotta shut up, lady. You gotta shut up. And the guy who's in charge of the corporate is like, just ignore her. And I'm like, dude, I can't. She's whispering. You can't hear what she's saying to me.
I know. In the front row, in the back, they can't hear, but that's all you can fucking focus on.
Right. And so she's calling me names. And she's doing all this weird stuff, and it keeps escalating. And finally I go, "How long have you been a Nazi?" And she goes, "Always." And I said, "Well, then you're a fucking cunt, and we're done. We're done. I'm done talking to you." And so I ended up, like 50 people walked out, and they're yelling at me. And I was like, "You can yell at me, but I have to do my time. So they have to pay me. That's what I have to do. He will prorate me. I know, Bert." And so
all cunts aside, I have a job to do.
Exactly. So I get off stage and I go into the green room. My merch is already set up, but I'm like, fuck it. And so 10 minutes, the one of the security guys comes out and he goes, "Hey, there's people want to buy merch." And I was like, "Is she still out there?" And she's like, "Yeah, they're both out." The guy goes, "Yeah, they're both out there." And I was like, "Dude, I can't. It's I'm genuinely scared. These are
not doing
these are the people. We live in a very dangerous country where people are allowed to openly carry their weapons or go to their car, come back and shoot up a comedy club. So I'm terrified, but I'm just like, but I have this very weird part of me that's like, nobody gets to push you around. You don't get bullied. you bully you. I have to own the stage. I have to stand up for myself. I have this thing, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people have it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go make $100. And so I go to the table and they're both there. And she's standing this close to me with the brim of her hat almost touching me. And she's talking to me. And I was like, you guys, just leave. Just go. And she's like, why? I don't need to leave. I get to stay. I don't have to leave. Why would you say I should leave? And she's doing that for like 30 seconds. And Brezhnev is crowding me on this side. He's just like, so I'm back. And the bouncer dude is doing nothing. And so then Brezhnev is right in front of me and I'm against the back wall. And so I touch him. And when I touch him, bouncer shows up. And I was like, you're right. Red card. I'm off to the green room. And so I take myself off and they finally leave. And then the next day I have to talk to the general manager of Zanies. And so I walk in and he's like, they want the security footage. And I was like, do you have a security camera pointed at the merch place, Zanies Rosemont? And he's like, of course not. And they have one camera. It's pointed at the ticket booth. And there's absolutely no way that it even works. So there's no footage, right? Of me being her. I have an audio tape of the set.
Uh-huh.
Because I knew that it would be a shit show. But the thing is so the general manager has had the worst day of Yelp reviews and people calling and she called her a Nazi cunt. And you're just like this. And so it's kind of escalating to where I'm like, your manager didn't remove them. And he's like, so you're saying this is our fault? And I'm like, it certainly isn't my fault. And so we're escalating. So I finally say to the general manager, okay, we both had bad days at work. Let's bring it down. And he was like, do you want to go up tonight? And I was like, yeah, I need the money. This is what I do for a living. And so I had 5 more shows that weekend. This happened on a Thursday.
Was the lady part of the corporate?
No, it was her birthday.
Oh, hopefully her last.
Hard agree, my friend.
Oh man, you know what? I'm gonna have a separate podcast just for disasters. Just a whole entire episode dedicated to
get a Patreon. Put it behind the paywall. Charge $1 a month.
Jackie, thank you so much for being here, man. I've been a fan of yours before I even started. I love your podcasts, and it means a lot that you're here. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Anytime. Anything you want to plug here at the end? I mean, we talked about your podcast.
Well, if people want to see my Zoom shows, they should join my email list, which is JackieKashian.com. It's on lower left, join email list. Harder to get on the list than to ever get off the list, which has an unsubscribe button on every one you get. So if you ever get bored, and there's no harm, no foul. I don't take it personally. I don't even look at it. I go, oh, I've lost a subscriber. Who cares? So, but if you want to see me do stand-up and work on the new album, sign up for my email list at JackieKashian.com. And then I'm on TikTok and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all the exhausting. And I have a garage full of merch. Feel free to buy some merch, you guys.
Seriously. I just donated a bunch of mine. But thank you for being here, Jackie. Thank you. Hopefully we cross paths again soon. It's been a couple years, but hopefully it happens.